begin by introducing Emily, right in the center there. Emily Reid is a curator of film and public programming. She is Quebec-born and raised in the Ottawa area, where she completed her BA honors in film studies and art history. Her move to Toronto for an MA here at Cinema Studies Institute led to her roles in programming and marketing at TIFF, Hot Docs, Historica Canada, and the Revue Cinema. She's the founder and artistic and executive director of the Toronto Outdoor Picture Show. Yay! A charitable arts and culture organization that is dedicated to presenting high-quality, accessible programming in public spaces across Toronto. The festival will present its 15th anniversary season in 2025. Congratulations. Emily received her MA from CSI in 2010. So I'm now going on to introduce Matt Devlin at the end over there. Matt Devlin is Managing Director of Marketing Science and Strategy at PhD Media. He works with some of Canada's top advertisers, helping them use marketing science to frame their approaches to data and technology, and, I like this part, to strategize when the best answer isn't in the data. Matt completed a cinema studies specialist degree in CSI in 2011. And finally, Alicia Fletcher, closest to me, is the writer and producer of Hollywood Suite's original series, A Year in Film and Cinema A to Z. She's a member of the Visual Researchers Society of Canada and the Toronto Film Critics Association. Alicia's film curation is featured at the TIFF Cinematheque and the Revue Cinema. Alicia completed a minor in cinema studies in 2007 and then an MA in CSI in 2008. So we are beyond delighted that all three of you are here. Everyone, please welcome our amazing panel of truly accomplished alumni. Yay! The question is, how did you get from Cinema Studies Institute here to there, wherever you're currently at? Yeah, and Alicia.
I'll try to keep this brief because there's been a lot of stops on the way. I started after graduating from the MA, which we were the first year of the MA, so everything was kind of unknown, like what can students do in the first year of the master's program. And luckily all of us have done really, really well, but it wasn't necessarily, there's no examples to follow at the time. There wasn't a previous year. But in the end, I kind of dallied a bit in academia. I worked a lot as a researcher. I worked for Charlie Kyle for years and enjoyed that very much on his books, and formerly Rob King, who was here. But somewhere along the way, I realized that graduating in 2008 wasn't the best year to graduate in. But also there had to be something very practical aligned with my knowledge of film. So I went the film restoration, film preservation route. So at that time, TMU had a program in film preservation and collections management. It was actually more photography at that time. And I was the guinea pig for that program to start looking at film instead of photography. So that meant that I went down to Rochester to the Eastman Museum, now called the Eastman Museum is what it's called now. It was Eastman House back then. And because of Charlie...
This is the Kodak folks.
Yeah, this is Kodak. And because of Charlie Kyle's influence, which has been in my life for many years, I focused on silent film. It turns out, though, that restoring and preserving silent film was not as employable as I had thought, and things were not much better in 2011 than they were in 2008. So I ended up just kind of focusing more on copyright. So one of the ways I sort of thought about my career was, what is something that companies have to pay a lot of money for that are film affiliated that I could do for them cheaper? And that is cutting out the lawyer fees by understanding ownership and rights of reproduction and copyright law as it pertains to archival film, to film programming, to places like TIFF, where I worked for many years in their archive. And that's still actually what I do now. Like, I produce and write a television show, 2 TV shows for a channel called Hollywood Suite. But the way I got that job is doing copyright, and then they just happened to feel like maybe they should put me on camera. So having something that is something that not a lot of people know about or can do, that is something that might not occur to you in cinema studies, that is very, very lucrative and will actually pay your bills so that you can then be a film programmer and do all the fun things that Emily and I get to do, is kind of how I got here. Was just finding that little kernel of, wait a minute, this costs maybe $600 to $750 an hour for these companies to hire an entertainment lawyer. I have research skills. I know the silent era and beyond. What if I cut out the lawyer, do most of the work for much less than $750 an hour? Then they just hire a lawyer for like the last day or two to check my work. That became quite lucrative. And that's the background to why I'm a producer, a writer, an on-camera host. It's just that little moment of I can save you money, and I get to still love film and work in film and get to kind of have my toes in archives and preservation. I don't do that work necessarily anymore, but that knowledge has been incredibly lucrative for the legal work that I do.
So I did my BA at Carleton University in Ottawa, where I grew up, and also finished in 2007. And then I took a couple of years off, not sure if I wanted to do an MA or what I wanted to do, if I wanted to pursue academia. I had a very rich fourth year as an undergrad. To be quite honest, I had a richer fourth year than I had an MA. So I did a lot of really interesting research in that year. But I taught during that time, so I learned what I liked and I learned what I maybe wasn't so keen on. And so when I came to Toronto, I moved to Toronto and I knew no one here except for the people who moved with me to do other programs. I did a one-year MA, so it went very fast, but it really, I saw it as an opportunity to get to know a new city, to follow career paths. I didn't know what I wanted those to be, but it was a new opportunity. There's not a lot of culture jobs in Ottawa, despite the fact that it's the capital. Mm-hmm. So in my one-year MA, which goes by incredibly fast, I knew I didn't want to pursue academia. I knew that pretty quickly into the first semester. And I decided I wanted to do a practicum placement as my third semester. And I wanted to do something like what I'm now doing at Toronto Outdoor Picture Show, or TOPS. I'll call it TOPS for convenience. I had no plans of it being as big or as have the longevity that it has now, but I wanted to create outdoor cinema. I fell in love with my new city. I wanted to animate its public spaces, and so I wanted to do that as my final project. I was dissuaded by faculty by a member of faculty because I was told it was too impossible, and it is a pretty impossible thing, but it wasn't truly impossible. So I backburnered it, and instead I said, I really want to dip my toe into programming. I don't know how one gets a job in programming. I imagine that's just people who know people, and I know no one except for my cohort. And so I approached the Revue Cinema, where Alicia's been a programmer for a really long time, and that's where we at some point first met. And I said, I'd love to do something. Can I help on a series? Can I start a new series? And the Revue at that point was almost entirely volunteer run, and all its programmers were volunteer. Its programmers. I mean, everyone did a lot of things, and that has influenced all the work that I've done. You wear a lot of hats when you do something small. And so I launched my first programming series. It wasn't very successful, but I did it for 5 years, and I learned a lot from it, and I met a lot of people, and I honed the skills that were innate to me. So when Alicia talks about the things that she knew she was just good at out of the gate, I knew I was a good event planner, and I knew I had a good sense of what kind of cinema connects with people, and different audiences connect with different things, but those were just kind of the innate things. And I didn't go to school to be an event planner. I just kind of used those skills and taught myself how to create a series, and learn from people around me. And then the following summer, I still had that itch and said, well, I'm going to try to do the impossible. And no, an individual can't get a permit for a park or to do public programming, but I'll actually partner with the Revue Cinema because they're a nonprofit, and they'll put their name on the permit, and I will try to figure out this thing. And so I know I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to tell you how something continues to grow over 15 years, but that was kind of the steps that went from academia, meeting a few people, making a few connections, fostering those relationships, and then building my own job out of it. And then, now I'm stuck in it. No one can take it over because it's all consuming.
With my undergrad, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was tempted by academia. I was tempted to try and get into the types of roles we just heard about, and it just felt like academia wasn't quite the right fit. I wasn't quite passionate enough to lean into it, and I didn't feel like I had the wherewithal to follow these types of journeys. And my now wife got a internship that turned into a job in London. And I happen to have a lot of family in London, so that was a sort of logical thing to do. And the first job I got there was to work in a primary school as a teaching assistant, which was good, to your point. I mean, it wasn't exactly in the field, but any job is a good job. And there was a lot of time off in close proximity to all kinds of interesting things. So that was a good way to spend a couple of years. I graduated in 2001, not 2011, so just as bad as 2008 in terms of job prospects.
Yeah.
But having 2 or 3 years in a school gave me an opportunity to sort of build a network and for the economy to start picking back up. And I asked lots of questions. I managed to get an internship. It's not even an internship would be the wrong word for it, but there was a creative agency called BBH, which has made all kinds of amazing things, and I got to spend a week or two in there learning how they operated. And actually the guy who I was supporting suggested that actually media agencies, the companies that do the planning and buying of the media space that ads go into, he was like, that's the future. And they were at a point where they were doing a lot of sort of open house graduate sessions, and I didn't have any trouble getting interviews, and that eventually turned into a job.
Was this in London, Matt?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
And that felt like a canny move to go over there, a bigger market, lots going on, a great opportunity to travel while I could. And we ended up staying way longer than we planned. It was kind of a 1-year thing that turned into 7. But it meant that I got an opportunity to kind of grow. So back in 2001 or 2004, digital advertising was a new thing, and today it's massive, and I sort of managed to ride that wave a little bit.
But you're in Toronto now?
I'm back
so
in
can
Toronto.
we go
Sure.
from London to Toronto? Yeah.
Yeah, so at a certain point it was time to settle down and have kids, and that's more manageable in Toronto, or at least it was 10, 15 years ago, and it was closer to home. So we moved back, and I managed to reestablish my career here. It was pretty useful to have fancy UK experience in my background.
In the same field?
It's sort of evolved. I mean, I've always worked in a certain type of agency, a media agency, but I've been around long enough that my roles have evolved over time from being someone who does a lot of the day-to-day work to someone who lays out strategy and engages with clients and talks about how to grow their business. It's kind of a more strategic role today.
Next question that I posed to them is, what does a typical workday look like for each of you? So we'll start with you, Matt.
So it varies. One of the things that I end up doing a lot of is part of agency life is pitching for new business. And it's been particularly busy over the last 14 months or so. But this morning we had a 2-hour meeting with a prospective client, and that involves doing a bunch of research, distilling complex ideas into PowerPoint slides and delivering them. It's almost like I sometimes think of it almost like a little play. You've got characters, you've got an audience, you've got scripts you need to deliver, kind of thing. So it wouldn't be unusual to be doing that, or meeting with clients and talking about what they're trying to accomplish, or staring at spreadsheets and trying to find meaning in the numbers.
I have, from the outside, my work days look pretty much exactly the same to one another. I work from home, and there's a reason for that. One, I'm an introvert and I like working from home, but also I run a charitable organization and I raise every dollar and I hustle for every dollar, and office space has never been a line item. That's not a thing. So regardless of the fact that my year-round staff has grown, we have always been work from home people. That is not an adjustment from the pandemic. So I work really long hours. I spend, because there's a lot to do. And because it's a small organization, it has grown a lot, but because it's a small organization, I wear a lot of hats. I've been very grateful over the last few years to expand my staff. We're now 4 year-round staff, along with a big summer staff, but we wear several hats. Something like 18 hats. I don't know. I count them every once in a while, wondering if I can take one off. Like, I run finance, I run fundraising, I run HR, I'm the liaison for the board of directors, I'm the head of programming, I'm the head of communications, etc. So that means that my year is basically in chapters. There is unfortunately no downtime, except for the first couple of weeks of December, and of January, and I'm on vacation right now.
Thank you for coming on vacation. I hope you're feeling
I got back from
relaxed
Mexico,
right
and now
now.
I'm with all of you.
Okay.
But as a result, aside from our production season, which is 2.5 months, where we have events several times a week, and that's a different thing. My days involve a lot of things. So January is kind of the first chapter. January, February is the first chapter where I'm doing our audit, and I'm fundraising, and I'm preparing to bring on a new board of directors. And I'm in the midst of programming, because we have to program lock by the end of February. So we started that in the fall, we continue it. There's a lot of other pieces, but that's kind of like the first chunk of the year. The next chunk of the year is, okay, program's locked, we have to start planning for the season. We have to start planning our comms, inviting films, locking rights, etc. And so on and so forth. Production season is different. I run outdoor events, so the very first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, which is not early because I'm a night owl, is I look at the weather, and then I develop a new game plan about what's going to happen with today's weather and how's that going to affect our comms plan. And I'm going to change our comms because we're running live events means you have to think on the fly, you have to plan, and you have to be reactive, and you have to know who you need to notify about changes, and then 3 o'clock comes and you need to start planning to be on site and run a show. And then we do that 22 times over the summer. And so that's kind of how my day is, but like I said, every day is different, even though I've now done this. I'm in my 15th year at this organization. I know it very well. I know what I need to do, and I know what my day is going to be, but there's curveballs every week, and I have to roll with them.
When is your season of outdoor events?
So we open typically mid-June, and we close at the end of August. And we have, on average, 2 events a week. We have 4 venues across the city, and we have on average 2 events a week, but we do open in June with a week of consecutive events. It's kind of our big opener at the start of the year. Wow. And then we settle in. So it's kind of like we do the sprint before the marathon. A week of sprint, we take a breath, and then we do a marathon for the rest of the summer of kind of 2 huge events per week.
Days vary a lot. This morning I spent in Nicolas Cage land because we're launching Uncaged, our Nicolas Cage film festival that happens every year at the Revue.
Wow.
So I was in negotiations with Paramount to get the 1 print of Face Off, which we got and sold out the screening already.
I didn't even hear about it.
I know. This is what happens. I know. The Revue's doing very well. We sell out screenings in like 5 or 6 minutes. It's really bizarre.
Wow.
Wasn't always like that, but that's 15 years of, Emily was there too, of leading up to that. But I'm often on set as a producer and writer. So I'll be running a film crew. A lot of the people we put on camera are CSI graduates. Just name one. I've probably put them in front of a camera and asked them a question about a film. And that's been really great to work with my graduates and with people who are even more recent undergrad. Like Alex Mooney we just had on camera, who I think just graduated.
He was my student last year.
Okay, well, he's great on camera.
Please consider this amazing room of bright young people to put on camera in future.
Yeah, I'm like the casting director for CSI. I just grab all the bright students and really enjoy working with new voices in film criticism. But if I'm not on set, I am working from home. We don't have an office anymore at Hollywood Suite. That being said, we were just acquired by a giant company. That sale is now being approved by the government. So when that happens, I will work for a huge sports network which I'm still grappling with as a very artsy silent film historian.
Oh my gosh.
So we'll see how that goes, but for now we're also producing documentaries on sports movies because we're hoping that could help us in this current climate. So my morning was also pitching a show on the history of sports and film, as well as the history of witchcraft in film. So I've been doing a lot of witchcraft research. I'm not really answering the question well. I think what's important is that my day is very unpredictable, and it's often just how much time do I have to know as much as I need to know about this one topic so I don't sound like an idiot when I go into this meeting or I go onto set or I go to do something like a pitch for a project. So it's a lot of deep dive research and a lot of hoping that people like Nicolas Cage might pay attention to me this year. This is the 4th year of Uncaged, and we think this might be the year where he actually notices, but we'll see.
Oh.
My full-time job is Hollywood Suite. I've been there since 2018,
Okay.
and I program four television channels and do the original productions. Everything else is moonlighting, so the Revue, I've been there for 15 years. That's all evenings and weekends, as is the Uncaged stuff, so it's kind of around the clock. But film programming doesn't feel like work to me. It's
Right.
really passionate about it, and I love going to the events. And luckily for me, Hollywood Suite is a wonderful company that sees everything I do on the outside as beneficial to them. So there's a lot of, first of all, they sponsor my series, which is amazing. So they give me money to go into the series, but they also understand that I meet people for our shows at our screenings. It's an ecosystem.
Okay.
And if one part were to fall away, I don't think the other parts would function very well. And they
Okay.
get that too. So I'm very lucky and in a very rare situation.
How did you navigate the transition between graduation and your current job? How did you learn about both the profession and the opportunities within it? And I think, Emily, we're starting with you this time.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think every time the words "your current job" come up, I kind of wince a little bit because I didn't apply for this job. It's not, I mean, it could be posted one day if I figure out how
You
to.
made the job.
I made the job, and it wasn't like suddenly when I was in it, I had a job. As I said, there was no salary, but also I raised $1,000 and somehow put on one screen on one night in 2011. And it grew organically with perseverance and support and all these other things. And so I did a lot of other things along the way. So there isn't kind of a before and an after. It all blends together. And also, as Alicia said, the other things I was doing helped me. So doing one side gig especially when you're still in your 20s and have a lot of insatiable energy, use it. Have fun too, but do the things that complement each other, even if you don't know yet that they complement each other. So, I mean, I'll start with the bleak part, which is that, you know, the transition between graduation, both from my BA, but especially after my MA, and my job now, it was hard. It was really hard to find a job, especially as a new graduate in this city, and I was not from this city, so I did know my cohort, and a lot of them ended up being very important people in my life in subsequent years, but it was really hard. I worked at Club Monaco. I worked as a temp. I did a lot of jobs that really felt quite demeaning, to be quite honest. And I knew I was overqualified for, and I was being underpaid for, and so I mean, at base level, I would say, just don't expect to have a job quickly after graduation. If you do, that's great, but it's not a bad thing. We're doing nothing wrong if you do not have a job in 1 month or 3 months or 6 months that you like. It is going to be a journey, and you have to try to find opportunities that work for you along the way.
A lot of that, what you were saying, was resonating for me. Like I've always been envious of people who knew what they wanted to do, and they just, they studied business and then they got a business job.
Yeah.
But I think that if you can set that aside, there's a lot of joy and interest in taking a more roundabout route. I think that I always knew I wanted to live in a big city and that I wanted to have family. and I haven't got independent wealth, and neither does my wife. So to a certain degree, that focused my journey. I like, some of the drawbacks of academia was it felt like it didn't give us enough flexibility in where we were going to end up. And if I could go back in time and tell myself about defined benefit pension plans, I might have become a teacher. But ultimately, it was I want to live in a big city, and I want to have a family, and I need to plot a course for a career without having quite the right kind of degree. And the way that I got there was networking. And I think, given the way I was doing it, I probably did it with a fair amount of urgency. And then, I jumped into working really hard in order to advance to a point where the salary started to get better. And it's funny, I was listening to you talk, and it reminded me of a visit I took to a friend who's made a decent living as a musician in LA, and I was absolutely burnt out from working way, way too hard. And it was really interesting to see his lifestyle, which was not as financially comfortable as mine, but was just, I had so much, it looked fantastic.
What was your friend from LA doing?
He was working, he was making a living, but he had kind of realized that in his industry, because things aren't linear, you can't necessarily brute force your way with volume of work into progression, and it's about accepting that things go in different paths and taking the time to build friendships and relationships. Okay. And I was pretty envious of that too, like the other end of the spectrum.
I think I landed somewhere not even lucrative but stable until maybe close to a decade after graduating from my MA. And that took a lot of saying yes to everything, which is something I don't do now, only now. Volunteering a lot, networking like crazy, but it was really hard times. Not having debt, hugely important. Living in a very derelict but affordable basement apartment, hugely important. But coming out of the archival sphere, there weren't many places that you can get hired. There's Library and Archives Canada, and I didn't want to live in Gatineau. I'm sorry I know you're from that area. That was not something I wanted to do. They also weren't really hiring those years. That government had shut down basically our entire preservation as a country. And there was NFB, which wasn't hiring. There was CBC, which wasn't really hiring. Where was hiring, what was kind of the top, was TIFF. And I was very lucky to get hired as an archivist at TIFF. And that was purely because I knew someone, that I had planned a conference with Charlie Kyle as an assistant, and he told a woman who worked at TIFF about me, and I got hired. That's it. There was no, my resume's good, or my cover letter was impressive. I've in fact never gotten a job from a resume or a cover letter. It has entirely been meeting people and talking with them that I've gotten every job that I have. That being said, I spent 5 years at TIFF in the archive as a digital archivist. And there was a point where I was, this is very candid, asked by the programming department to start programming silent film at TIFF, because I'd been doing that on a volunteer basis at the Revue. And it was an area that they had expertise in, but they didn't have someone who had an audience that was built in. My boss at the time said, no, I am a database coordinator. That is all I will be. And if I want to program, then I would have to leave my job. So I tendered my resignation within 48 hours, was made a programmer within 6 weeks, and that is the basis of my programming career. So
that's a big risk.
It's a big risk, but I had the basement apartment.
Okay.
I had some savings, and I didn't have debt. I wish I had believed in myself way earlier than the 5 years that it took for me to understand that $34,000 a year was abusive, that asking for 2 master's degrees in a job that pays $34,000 is very abusive.
Yeah.
The worth is, don't be afraid to say no, and don't be afraid to say, I am better than this. I say that, and I realize in this environment it's very hard because of the economics of it. And we're lucky because we didn't have debt and we had cheaper rent then. I'm not assuming any of you are in that boat, just knowing how hard it is out there. But protect yourselves, know what your worth is, have some savings if you can, so that you can say, I'm not doing this, or this is not good enough for me. 5 years was a good amount of time to put in to prove that to myself and to prove that to the organization that I still work for this many years.
Okay. Are there any particular skill sets from your time at Cinema Studies that you see very clearly feeding into the work that you do now? Are there things you wished you had done, or wished you had studied, or wish you had participated in while you were a student that might be useful to you now?
So obviously I don't work in film, but I often feel as though there are skills and knowledge that I picked up doing my degree that I apply all the time. I spend a lot of time communicating complex ideas, and I think the discipline of writing is like pretty important. And that I picked up a lot of that by writing essays, especially for Charlie. And it's funny, I found my old essays and I read them, and I got about 2 paragraphs in, and I was like, I have no idea what this means. But I also, watching films, understanding how narrative is constructed has been, I think there's a pretty direct connection to the role that I play in constructing our pitches, which are really important to our business. I feel like film history, like when you're working in advertising, the pace of change, it's really a kind of useful perspective to understand how the language of film evolved over time, and like there's definitely correlations to how social media has evolved as well.
Okay.
And that isn't maybe something that's exactly tangible in my day-to-day, but having that has been useful. And then, this is maybe a bit tangential, but I think that one of the strengths that I've brought to my career is being able to, part of agency life is being able to drop into a business and kind of understand what's going on. Every business has their own culture, their own way of communicating, and that's been a skill of mine. I've worked with tons of different businesses, and even though I'm an introvert and I wouldn't consider myself particularly like socially adept, I honestly think that some of the time spent watching films from all kinds of different film languages and spoken languages and around the world, I feel like that kind of prepared me to see, prepared me for the idea that there's lots of different ways to communicate, and that actually has a sort of intangible benefit in my day-to-day work.
Yeah, so I really liked the exchange that you both had, and I agree with so much of it. And I want to reiterate that a liberal arts degree they are soft skills. Some of you may pursue a career in film, and in film is an incredibly broad umbrella, as we probably just discussed. Neither of us make films, and that's what a lot of people go straight to is you're working in the film industry. It's much broader than that, but you learn to communicate, you learn to write, you learn to foster creative ideas, and that is much more important now than it even was 10 years ago, given how important media literacy is at this particular time. In terms of what I wish I had done, my degree was so fast, and even a BA goes by so fast, but an MA in a new city when you're just getting your feet under you and dealing with your own personal things, I can't say that I regret anything I didn't do because I didn't know what I didn't know. But what I know was really valuable was the relationships that I was building. And I do know how adverse I was to the word networking, despite how much my very smart parents told me that it was the most important way to get jobs and to do all these other things, and I hated it. And networking is much broader than going to networking events. Still now, I will not go to a thing called a networking event. That terrifies me. I will walk in a circle and hope I can leave soon. But networking means going to a series at the Revue, and you're going to go 5 times and you'll see a few familiar faces, and then maybe a few of those people will go out for drinks after, and that becomes your network. That is networking as well. You can have fun when you're networking. That can also mean you're volunteering and doing something. That can mean you're going to do a practicum placement at an organization where you might really learn something and meet people who will then help you in your careers. those are the things that I think I did some of, but it went by really fast, so I couldn't do as much as I wanted to do. But the other thing I would say when we talk about skills, I'm the only one who hasn't mentioned Charlie Kyle yet, but he of course influences all of us.
Charlie filled out the Eventbrite, and he's
I was
not
like,
here,
where is
so
Charlie?
We evoke you, Charlie Innes Principal, in this moment. Yeah, I'm gonna tell him.
Yeah, and during my MA, we were the third class. Alicia was the first class, and we were still, to be honest, guinea pigs. And I remember Charlie being quite torn about it. He took it very personally that like things weren't perfect yet, and he was transparent about that. You know, it's kind of nice to see your leaders also having existential concerns about their careers and their jobs and not everything's smooth all the time. But I remember I was going to travel to give a paper during my MA, so I did take a unique opportunity during my two semesters of courses, and I was underprepared because you're all busy and you're doing tons of classes and tons of assignments. I was writing a paper, I was underprepared, we were doing a run through, and my paper was probably not very good, and I read it to our group, and Charlie stopped me and told me that I had a really good radio voice, and I had never heard anything like that in my life, and I'm sure it's not true, and I did not pursue a career in radio, but what he did there was he identified something that I was good at in some way, and he was able to drown out the things that I was definitely not good at in that day or in general, and gave me a little bit of confidence in something that it was quite obvious that I was quite nervous about. And so even when I then went into programming at TIFF, which did involve giving Q&As to 2,000-person audiences, did not tell them I had stage fright because I knew I would somehow overcome it, and I did. I still don't pursue a career in public speaking, but it's part of my job. And that little nugget of encouragement that maybe had a tiny bit of truth to it allowed me to hone a skill that I would eventually need. This is a roundabout way to kind of trust the instincts that you have about what you know you're good at. What someone else tells you you're good at could be a peer, and allow it's not about boasting, it's about allowing yourself to say, okay, this is something I'm okay at, and maybe I'm going to do a little bit more of it to do it better, continue to do it better, and to have good self-confidence about something.
Okay, Alicia?
My first conference presentation, Charlie taught me how to pronounce Goethe, because I pronounced it for 20 minutes wrong. And then he pulled me aside and was like, it's not how you're saying it. And every time I say it now, I think of him. But yeah, I think we were, as the first year of the MA, the true guinea pigs. The greatest thing that CSI gave me was a community of people that I still talk to every day and work with constantly. And that's true of the second cohort too, and the third cohort, and students that I TA'd for that I now work with at Hollywood Suite, who were very annoying at the time, but then became trusted colleagues because they were, brilliant, and they were much younger, but I loved having them come back in this way. So community is probably the greatest thing that CSI has given me. Mm-hmm. It did teach me to fact check, which I think is something that's not very fashionable and being discussed in the news right now, that fact checking is going by the wayside, but I'm going to always be a fact checker thanks to how CSI taught me. And it also taught me how to use primary resources, which is I was the gap where you actually still could go to an archive and have to read something physically because it wasn't digitized. That process was starting, but if you were doing silent film, you were probably actually holding a 1920s magazine in your hands. Today, that's not the case, but I do think that those are really important skills in everything that I do. And most of my day is just distilling film history in a way that is palatable to an average audience. And getting those skills in communication and archival research is really, really important.
I'd say thank you so much for being here because this is really helpful as someone who's about to graduate soon. I guess my questions, I have two, but they're kind of related. The first one is for recent graduates, what places do you think they should be looking at if they want to get involved in film festivals or public oriented local cinemas or like festivals and things like that? And then the second question is like, what qualities would you look for? Like, would make like I don't know, like a fresh grad kind of stand out if you're like looking for a new talent? Thank you.
Thank you, YY. I think that was very clearly phrased, right?
Where would you look for this amazing scene where you are networking without networking? And then what are you looking for in the fresh blood?
In the fresh blood.
Sorry about the
I am
thing,
looking.
yeah.
I know it's my fault. I used that term. You know, it's probably a sense that they're engaged already in the community. Often, if I'm looking through resumes, I will recognize the names of people who come to events, whether that's TIFF, whether that's the Revue, whether that's, you know, it could be whatever. But if it's completely blind, and it's clear that they aren't part of the community already, then that can be a problem or it can be a hindrance. Because you're always, I mean, to Emily's point about there's 500 resumes when she applied for that position, I can tell you now some of those positions at TIFF get 1,400 to 2,000 resumes. For Hollywood Suite, we get 900 resumes for an internship. I don't think
Okay, take a breath. Take
Yeah,
a
no,
breath,
don't worry,
everyone.
but-
This is fine.
You're always going to pull out the people that you recognize or the people that have something on their resume, even if it says in their summary of who they are, I love going to the Revue. I love seeing film in cinemas. Give us something personal about you that shows that you are a cinephile, which you obviously all are because you're in this department, and that you take film seriously with a passion. And that will speak more than putting Microsoft Excel or Canva on your skills summary on your resume. Just give us who you are and why you would be applying for this job and why you're memorable based on your love of film. That would be my recommendation.
Would it be fair to say, Alicia, that you want to get a sense of their sensibility as a film lover? Like, what is it
Yeah.
they're drawn to? What is it that they're...
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say, especially once you get to the interview process, for us at Hollywood Suite, we aren't interviewing about your skills very often. We're asking you about what your favorite movies are, and that will tell us a lot about someone. And it doesn't matter what the answer is. There's a few that if you said certain titles, I'd be like, kick it out of the pile. But mostly it's about how...
You're programming Face Off. I'm just doing a
Face
little
Off.
dig.
If you
I'm
said
doing a
Face Off,
little
I'd be
dig.
fine with that.
Yeah, I feel close to you now.
Yeah.
And so I'm just teasing a little.
It is the sensibility. It is how you answer. It is how you communicate that passion.
Yeah.
And know that it's a grounded passion, that you're able to understand that people have different taste in film. And if you're programming an international or like a national television station of classic movies, you have to program everything. If you looked at my letterbox, it's embarrassing. I tell people not to follow me because I'm watching things for ratings. So I'm watching like terrible films produced by porn producers about delivery boys in 1985 New York. I don't want to watch this. Delivery Boys was surprisingly good, but it's for work. Yeah. So you have to know that people, it's an ecosystem, know everything about the films, but just lead with yourself, lead with who you are. Don't worry about, there's so many resumes and they're all the same. That's the thing. At a certain age, if you're all kind of just graduated the last year, chances are your resumes all look alike. So lead with who you are.
That's great. You wanted to add? Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, I do not get that many applicants. So if you apply to a TOPS job, you actually maybe have a 1 in 20 chance of getting the job. I also very rarely actually look at what's on the resume itself. I'll gloss over it, but I care so much more about what the cover letter says. And that's the same for our board of directors. When someone applies to be a board director, which is a volunteer role, by the way, entirely thankless, but incredibly important. And these are people who are accomplished in their career. I don't really care what their resume says. Like, does their cover letter tell them why they think that our organization is important and valuable to them and valuable to their communities, and talk about a film experience that they had there? That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. And if you've never attended, okay, that's fine. Be honest about that. Don't lie, because we'll know. You can just say why you haven't, or that you've heard something about it. You could just be really new to an environment, and that's fine too. I'll say that most of you look like you're 30 or under, and you have an advantage in that there's a lot of student subsidies in the summer for Canada Summer Jobs. Don't go to the job bank on the Government of Canada's website. We as employers are forced to have them there, and that's basically a fake avenue. But make sure that you look for summer jobs that are only eligible. So the people I have to hire in the summer have to be 30 or under, because that's literally where my funding comes from. It's not everyone that I have on my staff, but my summer jobs are 30 or under. And so, and I'm not the only, most of the festivals have
Yeah.
30 or under jobs. So that's a really great way.
How do they find that?
By just looking at each festival.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so sometimes we'll post on work and culture, but again, because I don't want 900 resumes, I can't handle it. I'm going to post it on my channels. It'll be on our
Are they called
Instagram.
30 or under jobs?
Pardon me?
Canada Works, right?
They're
Canada Summer Jobs is what it's called.
Okay.
But there's also an Ontario stream of it, and so that there are some lenience of for over 30 folks. But follow the organizations that you want to work for over the summer, and they'll post their jobs. You don't have to send them an email. You'll know when they post their jobs. You'll see it on their Instagram. You'll see it on their newsletter. You'll see it on their website, and you'll get those notifications when those jobs come out. And they will happen fast and furious when we find out about our funding notifications in the spring. So you're well timed as students that when you are looking for a summer job, there are some.
Wow, vigilance.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
almost everyone I've hired has either been an intern or a prior summer staff.
Okay.
I just want to have some tips about networking, because as a student, I basically know nothing. I know nobody who in the field that I want to work to. Like, for example, like marketing, I know like nobody, so I don't know how to have any networking.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing that I didn't mention earlier, and I think it's a good response to that. Use LinkedIn. I hate LinkedIn, but if you're especially going into a field where you don't know anyone, your professor might know someone, or
Yeah.
your dad's friend might know someone, and honestly, it might be helpful. So if you find that your dad's friend is linked to someone who works at this organization, it may be helpful to just have a link or a meeting or a handshake. It's helpful to know who is in a position of authority who can make some introductions for you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's a great answer. And Emily was talking earlier about how she hated the idea of networking, and as we were talking about it, I was picturing myself sitting in your seats and being like, "There's no fucking way I can do this." I feel like you did a good job of kind of reclassifying it. It's not about necessarily pretending you're something that you aren't. I mean, it's not about pretending something you aren't, and it's not about feeling like you need to sell all the time. I think that just being curious and asking questions is a totally legitimate way to start what you might call like a professional networking. That LinkedIn is a good place to go, and that
Where do you ask your smart, interested questions when you're at the beginning of learning about a profession?
I think one approach that I have used over the years is finding some kind of I think I'm sure there is a way on LinkedIn to search for Sensu grads, and I think not everyone will make time, but if you said, "I'm really interested in learning about this, would you have a coffee with me?"
Yeah.
I think you'd have a pretty decent hit rate.
Yeah.
And that it's important not to place too much on any single conversation. It's kind of, especially if there's 1,400 applicants, no one conversation is going to be transformative, or maybe one is, but you don't know which one, and so it's about volume.
Mohan's question was specifically about marketing. Did you want to give an answer about that? Like Mohan said, "I don't know anyone in marketing." Yeah, could you?
So I think that holds true. I think, one avenue that was under consideration for me back in the day is, looking into some of the postgraduate certificates.
Yeah.
Schools like Centennial or Seneca have really good programs that help to kind of bridge into marketing. And there may well be, it would be worth, most industries have some form of trade press, and you can learn a little bit about what's going on. And some of them have events where there's free admission to students, where you can hear what's being talked about, and usually there's coffee and refreshments, and there's an opportunity to if you're brave enough, talk to people.
Okay, that's very real. Postgraduate certificate in the field that's non-cinema that you're thinking about, looking at the trade press, and finding a student invited event that you might just dip your toes in the water and see if you're interested in this field.
Yeah, and call on the Sinsu network, or if you're associated with a college, sometimes that
Yeah,
is enough.
yeah.
Yeah, just to kind of signal boost, most of the people I work with at Hollywood Suite are coming from marketing, and they're mostly coming from Humber, Centennial, Mohawk. I think I might be the only person who has a master's, let alone two. It's clear to me how they hire. Somehow I got there, but how they hire is from kind of like internships and also like work studies that has led to, same with your hiring,
Right.
that has led to more employability. Something that our colleague Elena Decock brought up recently, she's at the NFB, is Playback Magazine. I don't know, no one reads Playback Magazine anymore, but they have the most wonderful job site that I only discovered last year. Right. And I look at the archives and I'm like, I would have applied for that job, I would have applied for that job, and it doesn't seem like those are posted elsewhere. And that's true of marketing, publicity, anything to do with film that has a job opening, it's on Playback Magazine.
Pardon me, as a recent arrival to
Yes.
Toronto, what is Playback Magazine?
I mean, it's a Canadian magazine. It's just it's the trade magazine like you're talking about for the film industry.
Whoa,
But
huge.
more specific to like distribution companies,
Okay.
marketing companies, exhibition. So not necessarily to be on set, although those are there too, but kind of the business end of film. Legal departments, which is sort of
Yeah.
what I'm in. So that was something, if I had had that 20 years ago, would have made my life a lot easier.
Oh, yeah. In California, one of my students went on to entertainment journalism, but also entertainment law.
Huge.
Somebody else.
Yeah. If you want to charge
Okay.
$750 an hour, go into entertainment law.
Yeah,
'cause
so
that is what it
a
costs.
BA in film, and then
Yeah.
go into a journalism degree could be one, but the other is a law school degree.
What are some like current day events that you think are good to attend, just to get more involved in the film industry?
Oh, present day.
Present day events.
You mean like this winter?
Yeah.
I would go to
Spring,
Tops,
summer?
but Tops is like in the summer, yeah. Alicia.
No, I'm going to hand it over to Emily, because I'm not sure. I don't want to keep saying the review. That's not fair, but...
I mean, the review is clearly one answer, and TIFF is another, right? Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
I don't have a great answer for that either. Events, I mean, go to whatever you're interested in. I lament that I, both because I work so much, but also because the city has so much, I don't get out to almost anything. I mean, I get out to a small percentage of what is out there. The review is like always on my radar, and I still miss most of what's there. I miss most of what TIFF Cinematheque shows. I rarely make it out to Imaginative Festival. Like, there's something all the time. So there's no right answer there. Go to the thing that interests you. Maybe volunteer to that festival, because then you're going to meet. You just need to meet 3 friends or 1 friend, and then they're going to invite you to other things. And just go to anything that interests you. And a lot of them are free, or a lot of them have discounts for students. Or, go to one movie and then sneak into the other.
If any of you are under 25, Cinematheque at TIFF is free. Like, you can get 2 tickets per screening to see every day a film, just by being under 25. Maybe some of you are not under 25. I'm sure a couple of you are. And that tends to be and there's a lot of events that they do that are specifically for younger people to, I hate the word network, but not network, just like have a drink and hang out and talk about the movie afterwards.
Can I be a devil's advocate and ask, but then, like, what if I'm, like, a disaffected, cynical undergrad, which no one here is? And then I'm listening to you, and I'm like, but then if I go to those TIFF events, I'm only just going to meet other audience members like me. How does that translate into meeting, like, somebody who could, like, help you get on a
Well,
career
those
path?
events are organized by people who actually work at TIFF, and those people attend those events. So you would just look for the person that doesn't look like you, and then start talking to them, I guess. But you have to start somewhere, and if you don't know anyone, the person that is the disaffected, twin might know someone. And so you just start small. It's a chain. It's a chain reaction. Even these, if you go to like a Women in Film and Television Toronto event, they're so big and they happen so often that I'm not sure what you come away with. Whereas if you go to the smaller, more intimate being the key word here, that's where you build memorable conversations and relationships. Anything that advertises itself as a mixer or a networking event is probably really too large to come away with something meaningful in the initial years after your graduation or while you're currently a student. But the intimate ones that you can kind of decipher tend to bring up the best relationships.
For example, this would qualify as an intimate event.
Yeah.
Can I add to that answer after you?
And I would say that the people your age are your network. I mean, I as I started to get a job here or a job there, sure, I made connections and some of those people ended up being really fruitful to my career eventually, but I was too shy to ask them for favors or to ask them to pull strings for me. So it was nice that I knew this person's name and maybe they identified my resume when I applied to that job at TIFF, but I didn't ask for a lot of people's time because I knew they were busy. It was the people like me who were learning things along the way 5 years down the road, and you are now the powerful network. It's not far away. So don't feel like you need to go high. You need to chat with each other.
And making connections with the people around. I chose a different path, but the people who did go into film, they were a super important network for each other. And so taking that time, if I had followed that path, would have been really valuable.
No, I think I was going to reiterate that get to know the people who are around you, and also trust your gut on what interests you. It could mean that you're writing a research paper, but I was obsessed with primary color in film, and it kind of just steered my glance, and that doesn't give me a career, that doesn't even give me a path, but explore what you're studying and just allow it to steer you into the things you're interested in, because you don't know what that might bring about.
I learned that I didn't quite have the right makeup to be an academic. That was a pretty useful lesson.
With your jobs, which obviously you're kind of like a jack of all trades, especially when it comes to arts, I guess. But is there anything that you didn't anticipate that before you got into say as a programmer or into writing as a producer? There were things that you were oh, I didn't expect this before I got into it. Anything like that?
So the
Everything.
lucky accident, the sort of I didn't expect to, but then I fell into it, and then it turned out I really liked it. That's the question.
Yeah, or just certain aspects that you didn't expect in a job, which once you get into it would make so much sense, but then before you got into it, you're oh, I didn't know this would be such an important skill or things like that.
I think I was very naive while I was in these halls, not realizing how much money speaks and how much of a business this is. I just thought you love film and everything's so nice and you get to get paid for loving film. I didn't realize that you would have to really chase money. And that also working with some really large studios, you meet some incredibly evil people that are not there because they love film. They're there, they're business people. They're very smart. I shouldn't have said evil, but evil to your love of film, where they will
No, they are capitalists.
They will actively,
yeah.
this comes up a lot, they will actively forbid you from showing a film that you want to show because a filmmaker has passed away or something like that, because if they withhold it, they can then get more money from other venues. Things like that, which I think I was really naive, thinking, who would do that? But you realize that you have to understand the business of film if you want to work in certain elements of film, like distribution, to some extent film festivals. Emily can speak to this more, but if you work at a film festival at a certain level, you are negotiating with some very, very rich, very, very, sage, but also kind of heavy capitalists, incredibly so, in the billions of dollars in certain films that have made that much. I don't think there was anything that prepared us at Cinema Studies for that aspect of learning how to talk to some of those people or getting what you want from those people when you don't have enough money to pay them. But that is something that as a programmer, as a producer, I've had to learn, is speaking that language and tricking them into maybe giving me what I want when I can't afford it.
What's an example of speaking that language? Is it like butts in seats? Like how many audience members can we get in with this? What is
No,
that
because
language?
if you are running a cinema that's 220 seats, that is nothing to them.
Okay.
They're getting 35% of your box office. They've just made Barbie, it's made 1.5 billion. They don't care about your $1,000 you Canadian you'd be sending them. It's somehow convincing them that they're doing the right thing, that they're a really big person for doing this, and that it's good for the brand. The term good for the brand tends to go a long way. Some people don't care about their brand, truly. But if you can find a company whose brand is evolving, and there's a way, or especially if that brand is tanking, there's a way to kind of convince them that this is charity, even though you're paying them to do this. That has been really helpful.
Or part of their
blackmailing
corporate-
them. Blackmailing them by going to the actor that's in the film. And I've done this and said, I'm not going to say the name, but I told this lead performer that, you won't give us the film and we just want to celebrate her career and she's going to be emailing you. And then she emails them and that unlocks the film.
It's like an escape room.
It's just
Amazing.
knowing that business. It's knowing who is aligned with who. That is not something cinema studies taught me.
And that's something you'll learn overnight.
No, I've screwed up many times. I had to learn the right way to negotiate that kind of thing.
So mistakes are good too.
Oh, mistakes are great. Yeah, don't be ashamed of your mistakes.